केलं केलं आम्ही इथे काय करायला फक्त बघा मग चालू झालं गेलं ऑलरेडी करू सुरू Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dr. Sanjeev Gadve, at Symbiosis and Business Law, Department of Symbiosis National. Today, we are going to talk about telemedicine. Have any question? Please hold your question till the end of the presentation, and please write your question in the chat box so we can answer them after. So, today we are going to study what is the telemedicine, introduction and definition of a telemedicine, application and barriers of the telemedicine, and what are the barriers we are facing specifically adopting the telemedicine practices. What are the different types of the telemedicine applications, and what is the current scenario of telemedicine in India. And we are also going to see the Medical Council of India guidelines for telemedicine practice for March 2020. So let's start with telemedicine. What is telemedicine? The delivery of the healthcare services where distance is critical factor by all healthcare professionals using information and communication technology for exchange of valid information for diagnosis, treatment, and prevention of diseases and injuries, research and evaluation, and for continuing education of healthcare providers, all in interest of advancing the health of the individual and their communities is defined as a telemedicine. So from definition, you can see it is about delivering the healthcare services where there is a distance is a critical factor, and using the telecommunication, the ICT, information communication technology, we provided the treatment, diagnosis for any disease or injury, and it can be also used for research, prevention purpose, evaluation, and continuing education of the healthcare providers. But along with the telemedicine, I am introducing one more concept which is slightly broader than telemedicine, which is the telehealth. So telehealth is defined as the delivery and facilitation of the health and health related services, including education, so providing education, health information services, and self-care using the digital communication technology. So basically, telehealth is a broader concept than the telemedicine, which have much broader application in field of the community medicine and public health. So let's start with the telemedicine. What are the advantages of the telemedicine are, and what are the different types of the telemedicine applications we have? So first, the application of the telemedicine. Telemedicine application, I have application in three basic sectors. One is healthcare, second is education, and third is disaster management. So let's see what are the applications of the telemedicine in healthcare. In healthcare, telemedicine helps in decision making, like planning of the therapy, clinical diagnosis. Then it can also help to remote interpretation of the test. For an example, the remote interpretation of the X-rays or other radiological tests can be done where specialist is not available. Third, providing expert care and follow-up. Providing expert consultation in a remote rural area where their experts are not available or specialist care is not available, we can provide the specialist care through the telemedicine. Fourth is easy management of the chronic diseases. So we can equip the patient with the telemonitoring services, and we can actually make it easy to manage the chronic conditions like cardiovascular diseases or maybe a paralysis. So patients who are in a convalescence period or for the chronic disease, suffering from the chronic diseases, they can be easy to manage with the telemonitoring. Fifth is prescription compliance. As you know that with the chronic disease also or in acute condition also, a prescription compliance is a major issue. E-prescribing mechanism can monitor the medicine intake. By using this particular mechanism, we can actually monitor whether patient is taking medicine or not. So prescription compliance can be checked using the telemedicine. And sixth is help in adopting the healthy behavior. You may be familiar with the different monitors that come together in the size of watch, which can actually monitor your heartbeats, your exercise, or how many stairs have been used today, how many time you are actually walking or running. So all these conditions can be checked and can be actually used to help the people to adopt the healthy lifestyle behavior. Now see, we are going to see the application of the telemedicine in the education. Now in teleeducation, it is a flexible and interactive way for long distance learning, which provide the program the easier for the training. So the distance factor will be cut down because of the teleeducation. Then there is a teleconferencing where the discussion and interaction between the doctors during the workshop, conferences and seminars. Then the third is the teleprocuring. Teleprocuring is a mentoring and evaluation of the surgical trainee from the distance with the involvement of the very sophisticated video conferencing equipments. So here, a new surgeon in training can actually get trained by the season 1 using this teleprocuring practices or application, where a very sophisticated video monitoring appliances is used and the surgery can be taught from the distance. Next, we are looking at the application of the telemedicine in the disaster management. A mobile and portable telemedicine system with the satellite connectivity and customized telemedicine software is very ideal for a disaster-stricken region. If you want to provide the telemedicine services or medical services, it is very crucial in a disaster situation to actually get the services at the particular station. So mobile and portable telemedicine system with the satellite connectivity can provide this access to the healthcare for the disaster-stricken areas. There are several examples. For example, NASA uses the telemedicine services during the 1985 Mexico City earthquake and in 1988 Soviet Armenia earthquake. In India also, Amrita Hospital telemedicine services provided during the 2004 tsunami disasters. Now, while adopting these telemedicine services, we have some barriers to face. What are these barriers are? These barriers are categorized in general in 3 categories. First is physical infrastructure, second is human resource, third is policy and organizational barriers. Now, physical infrastructure, as you know, we have problem with the low bandwidth. Second, there is a lower smartphone penetration in the rural region or semi-urban region, lack of access to the internet in the remote areas, and as you know, that ICT infrastructure, the information communication technology infrastructure, if you want to put that infrastructure throughout the India, it's a huge cost. So initial huge cost of the ICT infrastructure and the major issue of our data safety is there. Now, whatever reason, the people who are going to use the telemedicine, they are actually susceptible for the data hacking. Then we have a human resource. Human resource, we have lack of technicians which are actually have training in telemedicine, paramedical staff who actually pro in telemedicine, and a clinical champions also. We don't have any doctors who are actually trained in telemedicine. And third and last is policy and organizational. There are issues with the reimbursement and insurance, how to do the reimbursement for the consultation, how to do the insurance. Then there is a licensing of the telemedicine. Who is qualified for the practicing? What services are the should be needed for the telemedicine? What is the baseline infrastructure is needed to provide the telemedicine services? Malpractice liability. Who is responsible for the therapeutic failure? Who is responsible if diagnosis done by the teleconsultation goes wrong? Lack of accreditation or regulatory bodies. There is no apex body which actually support or manage or provide the guidelines for the telemedicine practice in India, and lack of formal infrastructure for that matter. So these are all policy and organizational barriers which are actually prevent us from adopting the telemedicine in India. Now we are looking at different types of the telemedicine application. Basically, they are divided into 4 basic types. First is according to the mode of communication. The way the patient and doctors and patients are interact in that mode of communication, they are divided into the video, audio based, text based, or asynchronous based. I will explain you asynchronous based in next type. Second is according to the time of information transmitted, which is the real time and asynchronous flow of the information. So asynchronous flow of the information is, suppose patient comes to the telemedicine center where the healthcare worker or registered medical practitioner is actually collected data in a textual form or in a physical format, and the data will be collected in the form of a physical evidence, and that will be transferred digitally via text or email to the specialist. That will be the asynchronous information. Example for real time is video and audio, where there is a real time examination of the patient done using the electronic equipment like video and audio services. Then third type is according to the purpose of a consultation. For purpose of consultation, we have divided telemedicine consultation into a first consult and follow-up consultation. I am going to describe all these two types in detail. According to the individual, patient to RMP, that is registered medical practitioner, or caregiver to the RMP, RMP to RMP, health workers or caregivers to the RMP. These are the different types of the individuals who can interact during the telemedicine consultation. Now, what are the advantages of the telemedicine? As you can see, a telemedicine visit can be conducted without exposing staff to the viruses or infection at the time of an outbreak. Now, you know that due to the COVID, it is very difficult, and it is priority of the health consultation to protect themselves from the infection. So telemedicine provide that protection, and telemedicine provides the rapid access to the medical practitioner, which may not be available in person. Third, telemedicine will not only encourage social distancing in special situation of epidemic and pandemic, but also it reduces the anxiety of the doctors when there is a complete lockdown situation. And fourth and most important part is telemedicine effectively used can reduce the burden on a secondary healthcare system. So now we are going to see telemedicine in India. So telemedicine pilot project start in India in 2001 by the ISRO, linking Chennai Apollo Hospital with the Apollo Rural Hospital at Aragonda village in Chittoor district of the Andhra Pradesh. Then in 2005, National Telemedicine Task Force was formed by the Health Ministry. In past few years, if you look at the ISRO's telemedicine network, it has come the long way. It has expanded the 45 remote and rural hospitals and 15 super specialty hospitals. So now this pilot project started with the Apollo Hospital is now expanded towards the 45 remote villages, which are connected with the 15 super specialty hospitals. And then ICMR have an initiative, the Indian Council of Medical Research have an initiative which is a Aarogyasri, which is another internet-based mobile telemedicine conglomerate that integrate the multiple hospitals, mobile medical specialists, and rural medical units or clinics. Now we are talking about the organizational support, which is one of the chief barrier for the adopting the telemedicine practices in India. As you are aware that till March 2020, there was no legislation or guideline for telemedicine practices in India. In March 2020, Medical Council of India come up with the guideline for telemedicine practices in India. Now, what are the existing rules which come under the telemedicine, which can cover the telemedicine practices? Currently, the old law, the Indian Medical Council Act 1956, the Indian Medical Council Professional Conduct Etiquette and Ethics Regulation 2002, Drugs and Cosmetic Act of 1940 and rules of 1945, Clinical Establishment Act, Registration and Regulation Act of 2010, Information Technology Act 2000, Information Technology Reasonable Security Practices, Procedures and Sensitive Personal Data Information Rule 2011. These all are primarily govern and practice of the medicine and information technology. So as you can see, there is a serious gap in the legislation. The unnecessary uncertainty in the rule poses the risk to the both to the doctors and their patients, and which is the major hurdle for the adopting the telemedicine practice in India right now. So in March 2020, Medical Council of India come with telemedicine practice guidelines. We are going to see the major content, what are the major themes in this particular guideline. First of all, these guidelines are made for the registered medical practitioners. What are the exclusions for the telemedicine consultation? Digital technology should not be used to conduct the surgical or invasive procedure. And there is no provision for consultation outside the jurisdiction of the India. So you cannot perform any kind of the surgery or any kind of invasive procedure using the telemedicine consultation. And there is no provision that you can consult patient outside India. Then training. An online program will be developed and made available by the Board of Governors in a separation of the Medical Council of India. As you know, that MCI, Medical Council of India, is now dissolved and another body is kept in the line. So online program will be developed and the Board of Governors will be develop this program and made available to the practitioner, and it will be mandatory for this course within 3 years for a practitioner to practice the telemedicine in India. And what about the new people who are coming into the practice? So prior to their registration, they have to complete this telemedicine course, training course. Now, as I told you previously, telemedicine consultation is actually divided into first consultation and follow-up consultation. So I'm going to explain this particular concept to you. First consultation. For first time, if patient comes to you with the current health condition, it's called as a first consultation. Consulted more than 6 months ago for a same health condition, those consultations can be act as a first consultation, because if he comes to you for after 6 months with the same condition, then also it's called as a first consultation. And the patient has consulted with the RMP earlier, but for a different health condition. So if it's come with the different health condition, then it's considered as a first consultation. Then there is a follow-up consultation. When the patient consults the same RMP within 6 months of the previous in-person consultation and is for a same health condition, it's called as a follow-up consultant. However, it will not be regarded as a follow-up in the presence of the new symptom. If patient comes with totally new and different spectrum of a same health condition, then it will not be considered as a follow-up consultation. It will be considered as a new consultation or first consultation. Then a failure of RMP to recall the context of the previous treatment and advice. In this particular case also, it will not be considered as a follow-up consultation. Now, patient evaluation. A proper care must be taken by the RMPs to collect all medical information about patient's condition before making any professional judgment. Then, patient management. If condition is manageable via telemedicine, a professional judgment to provide health education and counseling and to prescribe the medicine through the properly signed e-prescription can be given by the RMP. Now, here are the few rules which are required for the e-prescription writing. As you are aware that medicines are actually categorized into the several schedules. So all listed group of the drugs, that over-the-counter drugs, can be given anytime, whether it's a first consultation or follow-up consultation, or it's a video consultation, audio consultation, or a text consultation. But A-list medicines, which is usually prescription for a diagnosis possibly by the video consultation, such as antifungal medication or ciprofloxacin or antibiotic medication. This medication should be only given after the video consultation. It doesn't matter if it's the first consultation or the follow-up consultation. And when it comes to list B medicine are the add-on medicine. Okay, this medicine can be given by any mode of consultation, but it should be a follow-up consultation. It should not be a first consultation. In this particular scenario, only a B medicine list can be given. So to prescribe the B list group, the first consultation should be a face-to-face consultation, and then for follow-up consultation, telemedicine can be used. Schedule X drug. and Cosmetic Act and Narcotic and Psychotropic Substance listed in a Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substance Act 1985. All these drugs, for example, anti-cancer drugs, narcotics such as morphine and codeine, are prohibited for any mode of consultation and for any nature of consultation. So whether it's so Schedule X drugs or drugs which are actually come under the narcotic and psychotropic substance listed as a narcotropic drug are prohibited to use under the telemedication. Now we come to the current scenario, which is the telemedicine and COVID-19. Due to COVID-19 outbreak all over the India, many government and private hospitals and corporate hospitals are actually adapted for the telemedicine. Elderly populations, people with the chronic diseases like hypertension and diabetes are more vulnerable to the infectious and outcome of the diseases. These are population, it's very hard to get the consultation for any health related problems during the outbreak. So they are adapting to the telemedicine. Then due to COVID-19 outbreak and lockdown, it's get very difficult, even risky for everyone to travel and attend the healthcare facility or to expose them for as it increases their exposure to the infection. For this particular purpose, telemedicine right now is rising in India. It's a big opportunity for a market where, but it is estimated that by 2025, the telemedicine market will be of $5.4 billion with the compound annual growth rate of 31%. On 1st June of 2020, Prime Minister Narendra Modi sought a discussion on advances in telemedicine. He emphasized on use of Make in India products in healthcare and use of IT tools in the medical sector for the healthier society. So as you can see, a telemedicine is an upcoming thing in India. It is going to be used widely, and it is something where there is a lot of organizational, structural, legislative, and policy related gaps are there. So there is a lot to do about the infrastructure, to policy, to training for adopting the telemedicine practices in India. Then we are talking about the telemedicine and ethics. Of course, any kind of a practice, medical practice, should not be complete with the ethical part. So teleconsultation is a main ethical challenge in telemedicine. Doctors are required to be highly competent in the service provision. Doctors are supposed to be recognize the value of virtual communication. If doctor himself is not recognize the value of virtual communication, then he will not be able to give the justice to the telemedicine. The computer systems are yet unsafe, even if they are supposedly privileged with the high security. Teleconsultation provides a full access for all to new information and skills. Telemedicine is growing rapidly in new relevant standards. Now, all this scenario make very complicated, and it makes ethics of the teleconsultation a complicated thing. Now, there are other ethical issues which prominently comes are data security and confidentiality. As you're aware, the data hacking is a very common thing, and to preserve the privacy of a health documents of the patient who are actually accessing the telemedicine or teleconsultation, going through the teleconsultation is very difficult. Then the question about the informed consent procedure, how the informed consent should be taken if doctor is not there. Users may consider a monitoring devices as a form of the spying. You must be aware the challenges Google and Facebook face with the spying in the USA when they are questioning about the spying. So any monitoring devices can be looked at suspiciously by the patients, and it can be very difficult to use such a telemonitoring devices if there is no consensus between the doctors and the patient itself. It will reduce the acceptability of such a monitoring devices dramatically. Now, therapists should verify the patient's identity. Now, it is very difficult to identify the patient when he sits in the remote location. There should be some precise mechanism. Something like Aadhaar linked identification will be very helpful in this particular condition. But still, there is no such a provision. And therapist should have or should provide a different way of communication if his equipment of the teleconsultation is failed. For example, if he is using the video services, he should have some alternative if video service failed. Now, telemedicine and ethics in a guideline proposed by the Medical Council of India in March 2020. So, March 2020 guidelines said that registered medical practitioner would be required to fully abide by the Indian Medical Council Professional Conduct Etiquettes and Ethics Regulation of 2002 and relevant provisions of the IT Act, data protection and privacy laws or any applicable rules notified from time to time. The onus of protecting the privacy is on a doctor. For protecting patient privacy and confidentiality and regarding the health handling and transferring of a personal information, this shall be binding and must be affair and practice according to the IT Provision Act. Now, physicians should maintain the digital trail of documentation of consultation. It is incumbent on an RMP to maintain the following records or documents for the period as prescribed from time to time. So, physician should have a patient's record, reports, documents, images, diagnostics data, other relevant demographic data, and prescription records. And as I mentioned, it is not just a single record, but the digital trail of this record should be available. And it should be maintained for a certain amount of time. And what time period it is not yet prescribed, but it will be changed from time to time. So that time period should be followed by the RMPs. Now, I'm talking about the telemedicine and Ayush. In April 2020, the Central Council of Homeopathy and Ayurveda Siddha Unani Department both gives the guideline for telemedicine on the lines of guideline published by the MCI in March 2020. In 2016, Working Group of the Telemedicine in Ayush finalized a report. It has also finalized the MOU signed by the Ministry of Ayush and ISRO for the implementation of the project. Now, this satellite technology from the ISRO will be used to provide the healthcare services to the people where logistics is an issue and conventional method of the transport usually fails to work. So I must tell you the guidelines which are conducted by the MCI, similar guidelines are actually proposed by the CCH and ASU. Only the format of the prescriptions and some nitty-gritties are different, and those are available in the addendum provided by the guide provided by our institution. So you can actually check the total guidelines of the MCI guidelines March 2020, guideline provided by the Central Council of Homeopathy in April 2020, and guideline provided by the Ayurveda Siddha and Unani Department in April 2020. Now, I will end my lecture by explaining you how the proposed telemedicine network configuration, telemedicine network is configured. So there are three nodes: a specialty doctor end, there is a patient end, and there is a telemedicine hub. So specialty doctor end is equipped with the telemedicine PC with the video conference system, which is actually linked with the satellite with the extensive C band. And same bandwidth is actually we have with the patient end, where we have the IV SAT terminal, which is equipped with the radiological equipment, cardiological equipment, and telemedicine PC is actually connected with the video conference system. And then there is a telemedicine hub, which is ISTRAC, is tracked in Bangalore, which is served for the collecting and storing the data for a telemedicine server. I hope you understand the basics of the telemedicine. Today, we talk about definition of the telemedicine, what telemedicine is all about, applications and barriers of the telemedicine, what are the different types of the application of the telemedicine, what are the advantages of the telemedicine, and what is the current scenario of the in India regarding to the telemedicine. Also, we looked at the MCI guideline for telemedicine practices March 2020 in detail. Thank you very much. If you have any question, please write it down on the chat box who can answer the questions. So I received one question from Deep Modi. How telemedicine can be beneficial to the patient since the patient need to visit nearby centers to put the sensor on their body or for a signal transferring? It's a very nice question, Deep. So but basically, it is not necessary that they have to visit. Okay, you know that ASHA actually visit households. So ASHA can be provided that particular sensors, and they can actually a key to receive or to access the healthcare services and put the sensors on the patient. So there is no need to patient to come out. And then again, there are the facilities or there are the monitoring systems which do not need a special centers. For an example, you are actually aware there are some monitoring system that actually we use, which check our heart rates, we check the how many steps we are actually walk today, how many time we are actually doing the exercise. All these monitors are very easy to use, just like a watch. So those sensors are actually do not need any specialized training. So patient can actually use them very easily. But of course, there is a learning curve for adopting any kind of a technology, and that is the same for the any monitoring or monitoring sensor. So you're right, but for specialized sensors like ECG or EEG, you have to visit. But for heart rate, for oxygen saturation, for his exercise duty, for his movement, for his fall count, all this can be remotely monitored without at his home or 24 hours, 7 days without going anywhere. Second question, which is anonymous, what all certifications and license are required by telemedicine device? So for any device which is qualified as a telemedicine device, right now there is no certification or there is no guidelines or licensing procedure is there. You know, the consultation done using the WhatsApp also is considered as a teleconsultation, or even by the phone is also considered as a teleconsultation. So by definition, any use of ICT, information communication technology, to provide the health prescription or diagnosis is actually classified as a teleconsultation or telemedicine. Then there is a question or I think a request by Pooja Dani. Can I please get this PPT via email? It's difficult to attend till 3 p.m. Hopefully starts now. Pooja, I think you have to contact with the course coordinator. They will guide you for this, and certainly we will help you with this. Another question is, can you please explain the relevance of the timing of information transmitted? I think you're actually talking about, I'm not sure, but you're talking about the real time and asynchronous data transmission. So basically timing is very crucial, okay, for the data transmission. For any emergency condition, real time transmission of the data or real time examination of the patient is very crucial, where while for any chronic condition or for follow-up consultations, I think asynchronous data transmission can be done. So it's one so importance of the timing of the information transmission is actually can be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, whether it's emergency or not, or whether it's a follow-up or first consultation, or what are conditions they are actually seeking help for. Sir, does telemedicine involve the teleporting by radiologist or pathologist too? I don't understand the word the teleporting in what context you are using, but I think I will explain how the teleradiology or telepathology actually do. So basically, a teleradiology where you have equipment at the one side at the patient center, your equipment where you can actually do the chest X-ray or any kind of X-ray or 2D ethography, and the representation or interpretation of those can be done by the specialist who is situated at the remote center, and who can have access of the digital records of this X-rays, 2D echoes, or ECG or EEGs. How much? Then another question by the Pooja. How much telehealth is expensive? So basically, the beauty is after the initial investment in ICT infrastructure, the per user cost will go down very dramatically. So along with the in the long term, it is going to be a less expensive than the face-to-face interaction. But at first, it's a huge investment for the ICT infrastructure only. There is another question by the Ashish Bajaj. How to take consent before initiating the teleconsultation? So basically, there are procedures which are laid down where at the patient center there will be information consent form which will be explained by the healthcare workers or the caregiver, and that can be actually signed and uploaded on the system before the consultation starts. But there is a problem here that at every patient center you have to appoint a health worker or caregiver for taking the informed consent. Okay. Dr. Prachi is asking which are some successful telemedicine projects in India, world, or India and world. As I told you, Prachi, in the presentation also, ISRO is having a very good successful telemedicine project right now. Amrita Hospital has been using for 2000 since early decade of the 2000. Then there are various projects in India. I'm going to tell you. You know the Practo. Practo is using the telemedicine. Then there are more than 100 telemedicine what you call as the consultation services available in all over India, and they are actually successfully running their business. This is a huge private industry which is going to upcoming in India right now. And as far as the public teleconsultation project is concerned, ISRO is the one, Amrita Hospital is there, another, and then again in private sector, I think Apollo is using telemedicine in a large scale. I hope, okay, thank you, Deep Modi. I hope you understand. Then there is a question by the Chetan Kapoor. Is there any consent of a treatment required for a telemedicine? Yes, of course, consent is required. As I told you, the information consent procedure, the information consent should be taken before the consultation. Sunil Ambrekar is asking to provide the soft copy of this session. I will request you to please contact to your course coordinator for this. Sunil Ambrekar again ask another question. Is there any disadvantage of the telemedicine? Yes, Sunil. So basically, there are some disadvantages. It can be. So as you can see, you cannot do any kind of surgery or any kind of the invasive procedure. Okay. And then there is a problem with the identification of the patient. There's a problem with the consent taking of the patient. Okay. There is a problem with the data. There's a data leakage is a huge issue when teleconsultation is concerned. So all these are the disadvantages of the telemedicine. Then there is a Chamira question from Chamira. What disease can be treated effectively by the TM? As I told you, TM can be treated very effectively in many scenarios except the surgical and conditions. It has some limitations in emergency situation, but as far as a chronic condition goes, as far as acute non-emergency condition goes, teleconsultation is telemedicine is very helpful and very effective. Again, question by the Sunil Amrekar. What is the position of India today in telemedicine practice? As I told you, Sunil, there is a huge gap between the actual organizational and policy support or infrastructure policy or legislation is concerned. So there are not still any clear-cut legislation for telemedicine specifically. MCI, Ayush, and other CCH guidelines are very recently published, but these are guidelines. So right now we are in a in the transitional process where there is still time to understand which way this particular thing is going to go, how much legislative bounds or how much guidelines or how much restrictions are going to put up for a telemedicine practice in India. But right now telemedicine is actually adopted very heavily by the urban India. I'm telling you, growth is huge. It is estimated that 31% growth yearly. We are estimating is going to be a $5 billion industry in India itself. So there are huge possibilities, in this particular industry. There is one anonymous, how to start telemedicine facility in hospital. I'm afraid this is a very different question which is out of scope of this presentation. But if you want some information, you can always find out in Google. There is a question by the Shweta, how patient confidentiality can be maintained in a telemedicine. So that is the issue. But telemedicine confidentiality can be maintained as we maintain in the regular practice also. But there is an extra layer where the digital documentation of this telemedicine consultation have to preserve. So there is an extra confidentiality is added in telemedicine, which makes it more vulnerable. Amira, is there any supervision by government body for TM? Right now, there are guidelines are issued. There is no supervision body. There is no body who is actually supervise all these things. But the regulations and the legislations, as I told you, are actually abide. The telemedicine practices should be abide by those legislations. But there is no direct supervision body by the government right now. Anonymous, sir, scope for telemedicine in other fields such as dentistry. Yeah, dentistry is a field where sadly telemedicine will have a very limited role. Maybe in a follow-up sessions, telemedicine can be used, but as you know, that dentistry is mostly about the procedures, and invasive procedures or surgeries are not allowed by the telemedicine. There's a huge exclusion. So I'm sorry, there is very less scope for a dentistry and a field like surgery in the telemedicine. So what are the steps have been taken to avoid any adverse reaction or side effect of the drug prescribed by the TM? So as I told you, the e-prescription is done, and the first step have taken to avoid to have any adverse reaction is restrict the prescription of the medication. So as you can see, the prescription practices. I'm sharing you here. So as you can see, the list group O, now over-the-counter drug, the A listed drug and B listed drugs are only allowed, and B listed drugs are allowed only in a certain condition, and all other drugs are actually prohibited for under the telemedication. So this restriction on the prescription is a major barrier for the having any kind of a reaction. So that is the only way we can provide. There is there is no other way we can actually provide. And there is another thing that presence of the healthcare worker will also reduce or also increase the response if patient have any adverse reaction. Another question, is there any HIPAA in India? Yes, of course, HIPAA is there, but HIPAA is a guideline. It's not a mandatory thing. What are the drugs that come under the O group of the teleconsultation? Does antibiotic come? As I told you, antibiotic don't come under the O. These are the A list drugs. Okay. So if you want to O list this, it's O listed the over the counter drug list. It is available on internet. Is average charge of teleconsultation less than a physical consultation across India, or it remains the same? So right now, if you look at the data from the different telemedicine platforms, they charge the same amount, but eventually it will go down as people who are actually accessing the telemedicine is increased. Then they will supposedly reduce the charges. So that is the thing. It is going to be a very cost-effective technique to access the healthcare in future. Another question by the Shweta. Shweta, is telemedicine practice in other countries? Yes. So these are practiced in all over the world, including US, in South America, in countries like Brazil, and extensively use the telemedicine. All over the Europe, telemedicine is used. Even in countries like Africa, there are some successful experimentation over the telemedicine has been done. There is a question by the Ashish Bajaj. For how long are teleconsultation records to be preserved? So as I told you, there is no precise timeline period is now prescribed, but they have said that you have to follow the prescription or prescribed timeline given by the government. As I told you, right now there is a certain gaps. Right now they don't say that you have to maintain the record for this particular time. But in future, this guideline will be revised and they will tell you how much time you have to preserve. So right now there is no clear-cut definition how much time the records should be preserved. There is another question question by the Samira. Some fields like Ayurveda have more opportunities to treat by TM. Yes, of course. Some field, of course, we don't have very surgical or invasive procedures. We'll of course have a right hand. So homeopathic practice or practitioners or Ayurvedic practitioners certainly going to have the upper hand. Because most of them are actually related with the counseling and the medicine prescription. So they rely on the counseling and medicine prescription, which make them very easy to get to do the teleconsultation for them. So of course the Ayurvedas and homeopaths are going to have upper hand, while going through the telemedicine or teleconsultation. I think I have answered all of your question. I hope you understand and I satisfied your all of your queries. If you have any queries, please write down. If you have any comment, please write down in chat section. I will be happy to answer your questions. Anyone? Anyone have any query regarding to the telemedicine, its application, advantages, current scenario in India? I hope Shweta, Ashish, Kavita, Samira, Sunil, I answered your questions with your up to your satisfaction. So there is one anonymous question. What are the legal implications of the telemedicine? As I told you, they have to abide by this current legislation in India. So the penalty is the same, which is go for wrong diagnosis with the with our routine consultation and teleconsultation. So onus is on a doctor for a teleconsultation to take to check out his diagnosis, to take care of the diagnosis, prescriptions, everything. So and make sure that it should not have any adverse reaction. And there will be a penalty for that if someone have a serious injury or someone dies, because we have a legislation for the malpractice in India, and the practitioners, teleconsultation practitioners, will be abided by those laws. Thank you very much. I think we can hang up now. If you have any another question, you can please write it down to your course coordinator or email to us. I will be more than happy to answer another questions. Okay. See you then till your next lecture. Thank you very much. Is Dr. Swapnil signing out.